Today on Locked On Canadiens, we are talking Memorial Cup.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 1077 of Locked On Canadiens. And we are your daily podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. My name is Laura Saab, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm not joined by the wonderful Scott Metla. Scott is actually on holiday because it is Memorial Day weekend in the United States. He actually has an episode coming tomorrow in which he discusses lots of stuff like an officiating rant. He's going to talk about the Laval coaching situation. He's going to talk about the World Championships and all of that. So make sure you catch the Tuesday episode. This is the Monday episode, and today I want to talk a little bit about the Memorial Cup, and I want to have some fun also and talk a little bit about Montreal Canadiens superlatives. We're going to get to that later. But the first thing I did want to say is I did want to shout out Ryan, who I met over the weekend, and I want to wish the best of luck to both the Bobcats and the Lynx in NTG for their season. And in the meantime, I did also want to mention that last week, Scott and I had a mailbag episode in which, obviously, if you listen to the first segment of it, it was a little bit emotional, and we were kind of weighed down by that emotion or a little bit distracted by that emotion. And we had every single one of you. Don't worry, there's not a single person on earth I haven't heard from that we forgot that Caden Primo's a Nepo baby. And I think originally I think it's not that it slipped our mind, it's that we were looking for draft eligible players. So we were looking at either recently drafted prospects or prospects that were up in this upcoming draft. And Caden Primo, I worry a little bit that subconsciously it means that neither I nor Scott see him in the long-term future of this team, but don't read that into our forgetting it. Just read the fact that we had such an emotional first segment, and that's why. Also, lots of comments yelling at me for forgetting Rick Nash's name. Listen, there was a period of time where Rick Nash was literally my favorite NHL player. Literally, it was not a long period of time, but I loved him. That love was deep and it was real. I would never forget him. It was just a brain fart. I think that's allowed. All right, let's get to the Memorial Cup. The first thing is Owen Beck. Obviously, the Montreal Canadiens prospect. He has played, at the time of this recording, he's played 2 games, and he has a goal and an assist. And also, I did want to kind of mention, there was another podcast that was kind of talking about him not having had a very dominant season in his final OHL season. And so they think that putting him on an NHL third line might be a little bit optimistic. I don't know that I would say that. I personally disagree. And there are many scouts, public scouts, who know a lot more than I do, where yes, it is true that he has not had an excessively dominant season this past season, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't belong on an NHL third line, because the responsibilities of an NHL third line are not the same as a top 6, right? So I'm not too worried about Owen Beck. He is seen as one of the leaders going into the Memorial Cup, which is currently going on, and he's doing okay. He's doing okay. He's not, he's not at the top of the leaderboard. He's not at the top of the power rankings right now, but he's played 2 games. So I'm not worried about Owen Beck, but, if it'll reassure everybody, we will discuss Owen Beck with knowledgeable prospects who are intimately familiar with his season and how well he plays, and scout him in pretty much every game he plays, as opposed to just having an overall kind of overview, kind of like what I have is an overall overview. I haven't watched every single game and then rewound and rewatched tape over and over again and written things down. But I promise you, we will ask the people who know what they're talking about, and they will probably agree that it's not too much of a stretch. It really depends on A, how the finals go, B, how his camp goes or how his camps go, depending on if there's a rookie tournament, et cetera, he goes to it. So I'm not too worried about that. But really quickly, I believe it was our good friend Claude S. who asked if there were any draft eligible players in the currently playing in the Memorial Cup finals, I guess, the Memorial Cup tournament, because the playoffs are not, yeah, technically the finals. And there were a couple players that I did want to keep an eye on. There's not that many. I believe there's about, I think, 8 or 9 players. And then the top ranked ones are Sam Dickinson of the London Knights and Zane Parekh of the Saginaw Spirit, who both Scott and I have mentioned a couple of times. We've asked some of our prospect guests about it over the course of the year. Those two are really, I guess, like they're the top 10-ish players, like the players that are projected to potentially go in the top 10. However, I do believe the Montreal Canadiens have their eye elsewhere. So these two probably won't be around, or they'll be available, but these two won't be who people will be looking at. Something a little bit more intriguing: Sam O'Reilly of the London Knights, two-way center. Don't know if the Canadiens need him. They've got a lot of two-way. They need a little bit more creative offense, that kind of stuff. And then there's Jared Woolley of the London Knights. So like these guys would potentially be available second and third round for the Montreal Canadiens. I don't know, like I haven't really heard their names associated with the Montreal Canadiens in any way, really, except for Zane Parekh, and that's also because over the course of this past year, he's been around that spot where people expected the Canadiens to draft. I think he's going to be a little bit lower than that. But all the same, I do thank you for the question, Claude, because the Memorial Cup is one of the most fun events ever. And if you ever get a chance to go and attend it, do it. Like there is a lot of hockey ness about it. In some of the negative aspects of like hockey culture are there's like a lot of bro culture, et cetera, et cetera. But I do believe that there's been a concerted effort to kind of combat that now. But if you do get a chance, you're going to end up in a CHL arena, a CHL city of some sort. And you're going to end up meeting player families. You're going to end up meeting sometimes the players. You're going to end up meeting a lot of journalists that cover the games. And it's really, really a good time. I've got friends that started out as hockey fans, would go to things like that, and then now are some of the public scouts we consult. And so if you ever do get a chance, I definitely think that it is worth going. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Moose Jaw Warriors, who are the favorite, I believe, hometown team of one of our listeners, Boondoggle. That was just for you, for your patience. I'm sure you were waiting for the Monday episode from midnight and I dropped it late. Full confession, I literally just fell asleep. Like that's what happened. I fell asleep at 7 p.m. last night. And then I woke up scrambling to get to work. Didn't get a chance to record until today. But you're getting a Monday episode because I wanted to do a Monday episode. And what I really, really wanted to do with this Monday episode was Montreal Canadiens superlatives. I cannot take credit for this idea. I stole it from the wonderful, the goddess, Anne from Locked On Predators. But I figured it would be something fun that I probably wouldn't get a chance to do this often or ever again. But it is off season. I am hosting a solo show, so I did want to have a little bit of fun. And Montreal Canadiens superlatives is coming up next. But first, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. How often are you looking for tickets and it is such a nightmare scramble to try to get to them, especially right now when the NBA finals are going on? It would be so cool to go to a game. And honestly, it shouldn't be hard to get tickets. It should not be such a headache because now you have Gametime. Gametime has so many things. It makes getting tickets faster and easier. And the prices of the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip off of the game. And there's so many last minute deals, flash deals, zone deals. It's It's so easy to find and buy NBA, MLB, any tickets for any kind of event in your arena. And you can get the view of the seat from the app so you'll know what you're getting into. There's lowest price guarantee. And guess what? There are no hidden fees. Like, to me, that is the biggest thing. The hidden fees make me go crazy, and Gametime does not have them. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so let's get into superlatives. So this is something that I've actually thought for quite some time would be something fun to do in the off season. And from very, very early on, I've never done this before. We've never done this before as a show. But the other day, the lovely Ann Kimmel of Locked On NHL Predators did this on her show, and it was fantastic and it was really fun. She did this with a guest. I did not, but if you guys have opinions, please, please, please weigh in and let us know. Again, this is a fun episode. It's not meant to be serious. It is not that deep. So just let's have fun with it. So if you don't know what superlatives are, it is kind of like, in your yearbook where it's like most likely to become president or most likely to end up in jail and most likely blah, blah, blah. So I pulled up a series of superlative prompts. And the Montreal Canadiens roster / prospect depth-ish. And I'm going to go through some of them and try and have a little bit of fun. And I invite you to also, again, have fun. Sidebar, I think there should be Montreal Canadiens yearbook. I think every year, every NHL team should have a yearbook at the end of the year. Just kind of like, how we used to get them. All right, so who do we think is the class clown of the Montreal Canadiens? It is absolutely 100%, 1000%. It is Brendan Gallagher. And there were a lot of debates on Brendan Gallagher and the episode we have about whether or not the Canadiens should trade him. Again, that was, this is a podcast. We get to argue, we get to discuss, we get to have opinions. And I'm really glad that so many of you did share your opinions, whether you agreed or disagreed. Okay, so most athletic. This one is fun because this one you'd have to know who trains the hardest. I want to say Arbor Jackeye is one of those protein bros for sure. Josh Anderson for all of his faults, etc., etc. I want to say Yuri Slavkovsky hits it pretty hard in the gym. Definitely one of those guys. So, best dressed. Who are we going to give best dressed to? Do we give it to Cole Caulfield by default because he has the hats? Do we give it to Arbor Jackeye because he's always dressed like he's about to shoot up a saloon? I don't know. I feel like they're all getting better. Nick Suzuki has the creative suits. So, but I'm still going to give it to Cole Caulfield. All right. Most likely to get ID'd when they're 30, Cole Caulfield, because he's going to get ID'd when he is 50. That guy is not going to age. All right. The best bromance. I feel like you have to say Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield by default, but that also sometimes feels like a cop-out. Like, I really think that we kind of have to remember the other guys. And like Christian Dvorak has a pretty good friendship with Cole Caulfield. I feel like all my answers are surrounding Cole Caulfield. Ooh, I really like that. The most likely to drop his or her phone in the toilet. I have to say it. Most likely to drop his or her phone in the toilet. Yuri Slavkovsky. Something about him says that he's like a giant toddler. That's what's going to happen. Most likely to sleep through an earthquake. I'm going to give that to David Savard, but not because of his age. It's not because of his age. I just feel like he's probably the kind of guy who will take those polar bear naps and hibernate forever. Most likely to survive the Hunger Games. This one's a tie for me because I think Nick Suzuki's incredibly smart. Mike Matheson feels like one of those people, and Jordan Harris and Kovacevic. Kovacevic does like the van life thing, so for sure he's got some outdoorsy stuff, and then former, I guess, retired or semi-retired Montreal Canadian Carey Price was the biggest hunter. But I think somebody like a Jordan Harris is going to fly under the radar and win the Hunger Games. All right. Best dancer. Have we seen this? We've seen videos of this. Who is the best dancer of the Montreal Canadiens? That one you're going to give it to him. Biggest gossip for sure. For sure. It has to be Josh Anderson. There's just something about him that feels like he would be it. Best shoulder to cry on. I want to give that one to David Savard as well. I think the Canadiens are going to miss him. And I think it's going to be really sad, like emotionally for them. Obviously, he's a veteran. It's time for him to move on, et cetera, when he does get traded or leaves. But yes, okay. Who's the most gullible? That one's a good one. I'm going to give that one to Yoel Armia. I don't know why. There's just something about him that's like very sweet and innocent. He's a gentle giant. Ooh, I'm forgetting Samuel Montembeault. He definitely has that kind of, like, that's how he comes off. All right, most likely to be president. That's got to be the nerd, Nick Suzuki. Most likely to become a comedian. I'm going to give that one to Arbor Jacki. Most likely to become a motivational speaker. Michael Pizzetta. I know it's weird, but think about it. Definitely Michael Pizzetta. Most likely to become a travel blogger. That's Jonathan Kovacevic. Like him and his van life stuff. Like he's definitely got the Instagram life going. That's for sure. All right. Most likely to save the planet. Which one of our Montreal Canadiens is the biggest enviro nerd? I know David Savard has a rep for that. Definitely something that he really cares about. Ooh, a lot of players that are no longer on this team that would fit that bill. Most likely to win a Nobel Prize. God love them. Not a single one of these players. It's not happening. It is not happening. Most likely to run off with the circus. Ooh, I really want that one. Most likely to run off with the circus. Who do we give that one to? Let's say Raphael Harvey Pinard, not because I haven't said him yet, but because he's pretty small and athletic and etc. They could get some use out of him. And then most likely to become a famous artist. This one's tough because I feel like a lot of them probably have a nice little artistic streak in them. Maybe I give that one to Alex Newhook. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. And then let's see what else we've got. Most likely to write the next Star Wars. Give that to Jordan Harris. He's the most literate one. Most likely to write. Most likely to become a wildlife photographer. Ooh. That one's an interesting one. We haven't given Kirby Doc any. Most likely to open a yoga studio. Maybe that. I don't know. I like that. All right. So that was our first batch of Montreal Canadiens superlatives. We've got a whole other batch coming up in just one moment. All right, so we were talking about Canadian superlatives, but also let's talk about NHL superlatives. We haven't done this in a while. We haven't talked about NHL all over. All right, so the life of the party in the NHL. I'm going to give that one to Moritz Seider. He's definitely he's a funny guy, right? So I think Moritz Seider of the Detroit Red Wings gets that one. Who has the best car? That's interesting. I don't know what cars they all drive, but absolutely all right. Best click. I'm going to give this one to the Dallas Stars just because I don't know. That's what it feels like. All right, so most likely to... biggest pranksters. This one would be fun. Biggest drama king. Who was the biggest drama king? You know what? I'm just going to say Austin Matthews because I want to. But I think it might be Connor McDavid. Like, I have a lot of respect for Connor McDavid and the way he plays, and he's amazing. But he definitely can be a little bit dramatic about the officiating, which I don't blame him. He is a star. Everybody aims for him, etc. The thing I don't like is not that Connor McDavid does this; it's that he gets away with it. That's the thing that really bothers me. Is that you want to whine? That's fine. Don't reward that. Most likely to end up on Broadway. Oh, I love that. Most likely to end up on Broadway. Who is our NHL player most likely to do that? Do we go with looks because that's Leon Draisaitl? I think that's more like most likely to become like a movie celebrity is Leon Draisaitl. Definitely has those looks for sure. But who most likely to end up on Broadway? Let's give it to Tyson Berry. Let's do that. All right. Most likely to become the next Bill Gates. Low key, Evgeny Malkin. He probably has some sort of thing going on. He's going to start up a company, and then he's going to become a gazillionaire and then end up going in space instead of sharing his millions with a charity. Um, a lot of these are hard because it is most likely to become a professional athlete when every single one of them are. Oh, Nobel Prize. You know what? Sidney Crosby. I know like there's a lot of like mixed feelings about Sidney Crosby. I remember we hated him before. Now we've kind of mellowed him. We accepted that he was the greatest player of his time. We accepted all of that. We accept that he is a phenomenal talent. We accept how hard he works to be the best at what he does or better himself every single time. He definitely strikes me as somebody who would be able to do that. Maybe not in one of the physics or chemistry categories, but a peace prize or maybe even a literary prize. Who knows? And then most likely to invent a new form of social media. Who are social media stars? Landeskog was one. Nathan McKinnon. They're definitely the Toronto Maple Leafs are pretty active on the social media. Those would probably be them. And then, okay, how about this one? Who would you like to end up with on a deserted island? Well, let's get back to the Montreal Canadiens. Out of all those people, I did say Kovacevic. I do think they definitely have to be interesting to talk to. You're stuck on a desert island with them. These are all professional athletes. They're pretty strong. I'm sure they're all rich white boys. I'm sure they've gone hunting and fishing. They know how to do that. So I would say Samuel Montembeault because he definitely seems like the best conversationalist, like 100%. Like that to me, he feels like somebody you would enjoy spending time with. And, you know, you wouldn't get bored. He'd be cheerful. He'd be upbeat. He's nice to be around, and he'd know how to do all of that. All right. Most likely to secretly and quietly take over the world. I don't know if anyone has evil vibes quite like Brad Marchand has evil vibes. He just does because, again, there's some players like a Trouba or somebody like that where they're definitely malicious, but they're not malicious and smart. The problem with Brad Marchand is that despite the fact that he got a tattoo that said Starley Cup Champions when they won the Stanley Cup, he has a sneaky smartness and I don't trust him. So he's definitely like one of those people that will become a supervillain, would be a superhero. This is going to be a very controversial take, but Jonathan Drouin seems like the type of guy who would sacrifice himself, be the chosen one, live with all the pressure in the world, but then rescue people in distress or something like that. Who is most likely to drop an album? That's really, and like, is it a country album or is it a pop album? Is it a rap album? Because I don't know, a lot of them have like revealed themselves to be Swifties, but does any one of them have the kind of personality to get out there and put out an album? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. And honestly, like for me, starting a band is one of them. Like I feel like the Winnipeg Jets probably would start a band because there's really nothing to do there and there's no airport out there. Just don't put the coward Mark Scheifele on your band because he does not deserve nice things. Who do you think is the biggest Beyonce fan? That's going to be my next question. All right, this was like really just a chance for me to have fun. And I wanted you guys to contribute as well. I asked Scott and Ian if they had any thoughts, and Ian said that Josh Anderson was the most likely to break your stick while you were on a breakaway. And I think that fits. I didn't talk about any of the San Jose Sharks. I'm so sorry to both my esteemed colleagues, Jay Foster and JD Young. But this was really just, I wanted to talk about the Habs, and then it kind of branched out to some players from other teams. I am hoping that you guys have some superlatives for us. And this was really just an extended mailbag question more than anything else. Like, somebody asked it a very long time ago. I've always wanted to do it, didn't really have the bravery to do it. And now I'm doing it now in an off-season episode where I really, really hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you didn't, that's fine too. But make sure that you stay subscribed to Locked On Canadiens, because my co-host has an epic catch-up show tomorrow, talking about Laval coaching, etc. Paul Byron, for example. He's got lots going on. So like I said, make sure you are absolutely well. YouTube, we are free and available every single day here on Locked On Canadiens. You can find us on social media at LO_Canadiens, me individually at The Active Stick, Scott individually at Scott Matla. And make sure that you tell your friends, rate us, etc., etc. Thank you so much for listening, and Scott will talk to you tomorrow, and we will talk to you on Wednesday.